Sit down for a moment. Not because anything urgent is about to happen, but because nothing is. The old man shifts slightly in his wooden chair. It makes a quiet sound, the kind of sound old furniture makes when it has existed longer than most people in the room. He clears his throat once, not to get attention, but because that is simply what old men do before they speak. In front of him, 2 children sit on the floor. They are not especially interested yet. That is fine. Stories like this do not need interest. They need time. I'm not going to tell you a heroic story, the old man says slowly. There are no great battles here, no famous kings, just people, doing what people once did. He pauses, not for drama, but because pauses belong in old stories. A long time ago, before clocks mattered as much as they do now, most people lived without knowing the exact year. They woke when the light arrived, slept when it left, and measured their lives in meals, not moments. In one quiet town, somewhere that no longer exists on modern maps, there lived a man whose name was written down only once, and even that spelling was probably wrong. He was not important. That is why this story survived. The old man leans back. His voice lowers, growing steadier, slower. This man woke each morning before the sun, not because he was disciplined, but because his body had learned the habit over many years. He owned no land, no title, and no weapon worth mentioning. What he owned was time, and even that he did not realize. The town itself was small, fewer than a few hundred people, no walls, no reason to build them. Travelers passed through rarely, and when they did, they never stayed long. Most days were the same. Bread baked, water carried, animals fed. History books do not mention these days. They skip over them as if nothing happened. But days like these made up nearly all of human life. The children shift slightly, already quieter than before. The man worked slowly, not lazily, just without hurry. There was nowhere to rush to. If something broke, it would be fixed tomorrow, or the day after, or not at all. At night, he would sit near a small lamp and listen, not to stories, but to silence. Silence used to be louder then. The old man pauses again, eyes half closed now. You see, he says, most of history was boring, and that's why it worked. Outside the imagined town, nothing special was happening. Empires were rising somewhere else. Wars were being planned far away. But here, time moved evenly, like breathing. And that is where we will stay. Because once you understand how ordinary life really was, sleep comes easier. The old man does not raise his voice. He does not rush. And the story continues. The old man does not look at the children when he continues. He looks at a place slightly above them, as if the story itself is sitting there, waiting. The town had no name worth remembering, he says. Most places didn't. They were simply there. The man in the story, the one whose name was written only once, lived in a narrow house with a low ceiling. Tall people learned to bend early in life. He had learned without noticing. Each morning followed the same pattern. He rose. He washed his face with cold water. He ate whatever remained from the night before, sometimes bread, sometimes nothing. And then he stepped outside. The street was not really a street. It was a path shaped by feet, by years of people walking the same way without thinking. No one planned it. It happened naturally. The ground remembers us longer than people do, the old man murmurs. The man greeted others without stopping. A nod, a short word. No long conversations were needed. Everyone already knew the same things. Who was sick? Who had repaired a roof? Who had lost an animal? News traveled slowly, but it arrived eventually. Work filled the hours, but it never chased them. When the sun climbed higher, people rested. When it lowered, they worked again. The day decided, not them. The children's breathing begins to soften. The man carried water from the well. The rope was rough, familiar in his hands. He did not think about it. Thinking would only slow him down. Sometimes he noticed the quiet, not silence, quiet, the kind that sits gently between sounds. No carts, no shouting, no bells calling for attention, just the small noises of living. The old man pauses again. People believe boredom is empty, he says, but boredom is full of calm. The man in the town felt no need to be remembered. He had never imagined a future that included strangers reading about him. He simply lived forward, one ordinary day at a time. At night, he returned home as the light faded. The town grew darker together. No one stayed awake much longer than necessary. Candles were precious. Rest was not. He lay down without ceremony, without reflection. Sleep came easily then. There was nothing to replay, nothing to worry over. Far away, history was moving loudly. Here it moved quietly. And that quiet, the old man says softly, is what allowed people to rest deeply. The way we have almost forgotten how to do. The children barely move now. The old man's voice lowers further. And tomorrow, he says, was never a concern. It would arrive on its own. The story does not hurry. It continues. The old man shifts in his chair, slowly enough that the sound almost disappears before it begins. He speaks again, not because the story demands it, but because the night allows it. In that town, he says, nothing ever asked for attention. The man woke again the next morning as he always did, not with intention, not with plans, just with light pressing gently against his eyes. Outside, the air was cool and still, the kind of stillness that feels permanent when you live inside it long enough. He stepped out, closed the door behind him, and did not lock it. Locks were uncommon then, not because people were better, but because there was less to protect. The path through the town looked the same as yesterday, and the day before that, and the year before. A woman swept dust from in front of her doorway, not to make it clean, but to move time forward. Another man sat on a low stool, repairing something that did not truly need repair. Work did not mean productivity, it meant movement. The old man pauses, letting the idea settle. People did not ask if their lives were meaningful, he continues. They were too busy living them. The man carried a small bundle across the town. What was inside no longer matters. It was useful then. That was enough. He noticed the sound of footsteps behind him and stepped aside without turning. The other person passed. No words were exchanged. None were needed. The children breathed slowly now, in time with the old man's voice. Midday arrived without announcement. The sun simply reached a certain place and stopped climbing. People rested where they were. No clocks rang. No bells warned them. Bodies understood when to stop. The man sat against a wall and closed his eyes. Not to sleep, just to be still. In a world without constant noise, the old man says softly, rest happens naturally. Time passed in pieces too small to count. When work resumed, it did so without effort, without resentment. The man returned home as the light softened again. He ate simply. He drank water slowly. There was no reason to rush through anything. That night, the sky held no special signs, no omens, no announcements of change. And that was comforting. The old man lowers his voice further. History remembers change, he says, but the body remembers calm. The man lay down and slept deeply, without dreams worth noting. Tomorrow would be similar, and that knowledge made rest easy. The story moves forward, gently, without asking you to follow too closely. The old man's voice grows softer, not because he is trying to be quiet, but because there is less effort in it now. The room no longer needs much sound. In that place, he says, days did not try to be different. The man in the town woke again, as expected. Light entered the room in the same way it always did, resting briefly on the wall before moving on. He did not check the sky. There was no reason to. He stood, stretched once, and waited. Waiting was normal. It filled small gaps in the day without being noticed. Outside, the town was already awake. Not fully, just enough. A door opened, another closed. Somewhere, water moved. No one announced the morning. The man walked the familiar path again. His feet knew where to go. His body followed without instruction. The body, the old man murmurs, learns routines faster than the mind. Someone passed him carrying a basket. Someone else leaned against a wall, watching nothing in particular. These moments did not register as events. They were simply part of being there. The children listening barely move now. One of them exhales slowly and settles deeper. The man reached the edge of the town where fields began without ceremony. No boundary marked the change. Dirt became softer. The air opened slightly. He worked there for a while, not intensely, not carefully, just steadily. Time did not press forward. It spread out. The sun climbed, then paused, then began to drift back down. The man did not notice the exact moment. No one ever did. He stopped working when his body told him to. Hunger arrived quietly. He ate without thought. The old man pauses again. There was no sense of wasting time, he says, because time was not counted. The man sat on the ground for a while, hands resting on his knees. He did not think about tomorrow. He did not review today. He simply remained. When he returned to the town, nothing had changed. And that felt correct. Evening arrived slowly. Shadows lengthened without warning. The air cooled by degrees too small to measure. Inside his home, the man lit a small lamp. The flame was steady. It did not flicker. Nothing disturbed it. He sat, listening to the quiet he had grown used to. Quiet that did not feel empty. Quiet that felt complete. The old man's voice lowers further. Lives like this, he says, rarely leaves stories behind. The man lay down when his eyes grew heavy. Sleep did not need to be invited. It came on its own. Outside, the town rested together. No one stayed awake longer than necessary. The night passed without remark. And somewhere inside that sameness, rest became easy. The story continues, without changing its pace. The old man pauses longer this time, not because he has forgotten the story, but because forgetting is part of it. When nothing changes, he says quietly, you stop noticing time. The man in the town woke again, but it did not feel like a new day. It felt like a continuation. Light entered the room in the same soft way. The wall looked the same. The air felt the same. He remained seated on the edge of his bed for a moment, not thinking, not planning, just allowing himself to be awake. Outside, the town moved slowly, as it always did. Someone coughed. Someone adjusted a door. Somewhere an animal shifted its weight. These were not sounds people reacted to, the old man murmurs. They were sounds people trusted. The man stepped outside and stood still for a moment. Standing was enough. Movement would come later. He walked the path again, feet settling into familiar impressions in the ground. The path did not resist. It welcomed repetition. A neighbor nodded once. The man nodded back. No words were exchanged. There was no need to confirm anything. Everyone already knew where they belonged. The children listening are barely aware of the room now. Breathing has slowed. Shoulders have dropped. The man reached the well and waited his turn. Waiting did not feel long. Time did not stretch when no one pulled on it. He drew water carefully, not because it was dangerous, but because habits form quietly. The bucket was heavier on the way back. He adjusted his grip without thinking. The old man lowers his voice further. Life, he says, was made of small efforts that never asked to be noticed. The man rested when the sun reached a certain height. He did not know which hour it was. He did not need to. He sat against a wall and closed his eyes briefly. Not to sleep, just to pause. Thoughts passed through without staying. They had nowhere to settle. When he opened his eyes again, the day continued. Work resumed gently. Not faster. Not slower. Just steady. As evening approached, the town softened. Shadows grew longer. Sounds became fewer. Movement slowed naturally. The man returned home, ate what was available, and drank water slowly. No reflections followed. No worries arrived. When days are simple, the old man whispers, sleep does not have to work hard. The man lay down. His body recognized the moment. Sleep arrived quietly, without dreams worth remembering. Outside, the town rested again, exactly as it had before, and the night passed, without asking to be named. The story moves on, slowly, without needing your attention. The old man's voice does not change much now. It does not need to. The town, he says quietly, had learned how to move without thinking. The man woke again, but the act of waking felt smaller than before, as if sleep had only stepped a short distance away, and could return at any moment. He sat for a while before standing. There was no reason to hurry into the day. The day was already there. Outside, the air felt familiar. Not warm, not cold, just present. The path through the town held its shape. Feet had pressed it into memory over many years. It did not need maintenance. It only needed repetition. The man walked without counting steps, without choosing direction. His body followed what it already knew. Routine, the old man murmurs, is what remains when decisions are no longer needed. Someone passed him carrying something wrapped in cloth. The man did not look closely. Curiosity was unnecessary. Another figure leaned against a wall, watching the light change slowly across the ground. Watching was enough. The children listening no longer shift. Their breathing has found a steady rhythm. The room follows it. The man reached his work and began, hands moving gently, without force. The work did not require focus. It allowed the mind to stay quiet. Minutes passed unnoticed. Then more minutes. Then time stopped feeling like something that moved at all. The old man pauses, letting the silence carry weight. When time stops asking for attention, he continues softly. The mind rests on its own. The man paused when his body suggested it. He drank water slowly, feeling the coolness settle. There was no sense of accomplishment. No sense of delay. Just continuation. The sun shifted gradually, marking change without announcement. The man sat briefly, not thinking, not remembering, not expecting. When he stood again, movement returned easily. Evening arrived gently, not suddenly, not dramatically. The town responded by slowing, as it always did. Doors closed one by one. Voices faded. Light softened. Inside his home, the man lit his lamp. The flame remained steady, unchallenged. He sat for a while, listening to the quiet he trusted. The old man's voice becomes almost a whisper. Days like these, he says, did not need to be kept. The man lay down when his body grew heavy. Sleep did not wait for permission. Outside, the town rested again, holding its shape through the night. Nothing ended. Nothing began. And the story continues, slowly dissolving into rest. The old man shifts slightly in his chair. The wood creaks once, then settles. The night, he says, did not hurry either. The man slept without dreams he could hold. Not empty sleep, just unmarked. When morning returned, it did not announce itself. Light simply appeared where darkness had been. He opened his eyes slowly, as if testing the day before entering it. There was no thought of yesterday. Yesterday had already dissolved. The room greeted him with stillness. Objects waited patiently. They always did. He sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of his body arrive fully. No rush to stand. No need to remain seated. Outside, the town breathed in its quiet way. A sound here. A pause there. The man stepped outside and felt the ground receive him. The ground never argued. Places, the old man murmurs. Remember us even when we forget ourselves. He walked again, not because he needed to go somewhere, but because walking completed the morning. A door opened in the distance. A voice spoke briefly, then stopped. Nothing followed. The man noticed how sound behaved differently now. Appearing, then letting go. At his work, he resumed the gentle motions. Hands moved. Time softened. No plans waited ahead. No memories pulled him back. Only the present moment, wide and unoccupied. The children listening breathe deeper now. The room grows heavier with calm. The man paused at midday, sitting where shade naturally formed. He closed his eyes without sleeping. Just resting. When rest, the old man whispers, arrives before exhaustion, the body learns trust. The man ate slowly. Food tasted simple. Enough. Afternoon passed unnoticed. Light shifted again, as it always would. The man finished nothing, and left nothing unfinished. He walked home as evening approached, the sky lowering its voice. Inside, the lamp glowed once more. The flame did not flicker. He sat quietly, hands resting, thoughts thinning. The night gathered itself gently. When he lay down, sleep arrived without shape, without story. Outside, the town held steady. Inside, the man drifted. The old man's voice lowers further. And so, he says, the days continued. Not to be remembered, but to be lived. The silence stretches. Nothing more is required. The old man does not move now. Only his voice remains. Some nights, he says, are not meant to be noticed. The man slept longer than usual, not because he was tired, but because the night asked him to stay. Morning waited. When his eyes finally opened, the world felt unchanged, and that was a comfort. The ceiling above him held its familiar shape. The air rested calmly on his skin. No urgency entered the room. He remained still, listening to the quiet arrange itself. Breathing came and went, without instruction. He rose slowly, as though standing were optional. Outside, the day was pale and patient. Clouds drifted without purpose. They did not need one. The man walked beneath them, feeling small in a gentle way. Small, the old man murmurs, is not weakness. It is relief. A bird crossed the sky, then disappeared. The sky did not react. At work, fewer words were spoken. Fewer were needed. Hands knew what to do. Without asking the mind, time softened again, stretching like warm cloth. At midday, the man paused beside a window. Light rested on the floor. He watched dust float slowly, each particle unhurried, each one complete. The children listening feel their shoulders drop. Their breathing deepens. The man closed his eyes. For a moment too long to be called a moment. Nothing was lost. Afternoon faded gently. No signal announced it. When evening arrived, it did not interrupt. The man walked home as lamps woke one by one. Each glow was modest. Each was enough. Inside his room, the chair waited. He sat, hands open, thoughts loosening their grip. The mind, the old man whispers, learns peace when it is not held. The night settled around him, like a familiar coat. When he lay down, sleep did not rush forward. It approached slowly, Respectfully, the man welcomed it, without words. Outside, the town exhaled. Inside, the man drifted, not into dreams, but into depth. The old man's voice thins until it nearly disappears. And so the hours passed, he says. Without being counted, silence stretches, breath slows. Nothing more happens. Nothing needs to. The old man does not look at the children anymore. His eyes rest somewhere deeper. After many nights, he says softly, time forgets how to hurry. The man woke before dawn. Not suddenly. Not fully. He floated upward from sleep, the way fog lifts from a field. The room was dim, not dark, not light. That in-between place, where thoughts have not yet learned to speak. He stayed there, listening. The clock did not matter. It could wait. Outside, the world was still deciding whether to begin. A distant sound, perhaps wind, perhaps memory. The man breathed in, and nothing followed. No plan, no concern. He breathed out, and the breath left completely. Breath, the old man murmurs. Is the body remembering how to rest? The man sat up slowly, as if standing were an idea, not an obligation. The floor felt cool and familiar. It held him without comment. He walked to the window. The sky was a soft gray, like paper before writing. No birds yet. No movement. Just waiting. He watched without expectation, and because of that, everything felt complete. When the first light arrived, it did not announce itself. It simply was. The man smiled, but not with his mouth. Something inside him settled into place. Later, the day moved gently around him. Voices were distant. Tasks were simple. Nothing pressed. Nothing pulled. Even time seemed to walk instead of run. The children listening shift closer together. Their eyes grow heavy. The old man leans back in his chair. Rest, he says, is not something you earn. It is something you allow. Evening returned, as it always does. The man did not greet it. He did not resist it. He let it arrive. Lights dimmed. Sounds softened. When he lay down, his body recognized the moment. Sleep opened its door without effort. Thoughts loosened, then faded. The night took him gently, as water takes a leaf. The old man's voice slows even further. And the world, he whispers, continued quietly. Whether he noticed or not, silence grows wide. Breath deepens. Nothing else is required. There was no clear line between sleep and waking anymore. The man drifted somewhere in between, where thoughts no longer asked questions. The room around him felt distant, as if it belonged to another time, another version of him. Breathing became slow, so slow it almost forgot to return. In that space, Nothing waited. No memory called out. No future leaned forward. Just the steady presence of being. The old man's voice moves carefully now, as though even sound might disturb what has settled. Some nights, he whispers, the body sleeps. Before the mind realizes it, the man turned slightly in his sleep. Not intentionally. The body adjusting itself without instruction. The blanket rested where it should. The bed held him evenly. No discomfort remained. Outside, the town continued its quiet rhythm. Somewhere, a door closed softly. Somewhere else, a light went dark. None of it reached him. Time moved without counting itself. Hours passed, as gently as clouds. The man dreamed briefly, not in images, but in feelings. A sense of warmth, a sense of safety. Nothing more. The dream faded, without leaving a mark. Sleep deepened again. The old man pauses, allowing the silence to do its work. When the mind rests, he says softly, the world becomes simpler. Morning arrived slowly, but it did not pull the man back. Light pressed against the edges of the room, waiting. The man remained where he was, suspended in calm. Breath in, breath out, each one lighter than the last. Even thoughts of waking felt unnecessary. The day outside did not hurry him. It would wait. The body knows when to return. For now, rest was complete. The old man leans back further into his chair. His words stretch apart. There is no need to follow the story now, he murmurs. It will continue, whether you listen or not. The man sleeps on. The town breathes quietly. The night releases its hold, slowly, carefully, without asking anything in return. And in this space, between one moment and the next, nothing needs to be done. Nothing needs to be remembered. Only rest remains. The night no longer felt like night. It had softened into something without a name. The man remained asleep, but not heavily, not lightly either. He rested in a place where the body no longer distinguishes between minutes and hours. Breathing moved on its own, slow, even almost unnoticeable. The old man's voice is barely present now. It does not lead. It simply exists. In deep rest, he says quietly, time stops asking questions. The man turned once more in his sleep. A small movement, as natural as water finding level ground. No thoughts followed. No images formed. The mind had stepped aside. Outside, the town held its shape. Walls stood. Paths waited. Doors remained closed. Nothing required attention. Somewhere far away, a sound might have existed, but it did not arrive here. This place was protected by calm. The old man pauses again. Longer this time. Silence settles, like a blanket, laid carefully over everything. When silence stays long enough, he whispers, it becomes familiar. The man's body sank deeper, into the bed, as if gravity had softened. Muscles released, what they had been holding for years. Without being asked, the jaw loosened. The shoulders dropped. The breath deepened further. There was no edge to this moment. No beginning. No end. Just continuation. The room faded slightly. Then more. Even the idea of a room grew distant. Sleep expanded, until it felt spacious. The old man's words stretch apart now, leaving more space than sound. You don't have to listen anymore, he murmurs. The story remembers itself. Morning may come, or it may not. Either way, rest remains. The man sleeps on, untouched by clocks, unaware of progress. Time passes, but gently, as if walking barefoot. The town remains quiet. The world continues. But far away, here, Nothing changes. And because nothing changes, everything feels safe. The old man's voice fades, almost completely. This part, he says, can repeat without anyone noticing. Breathing slows. Silence widens. Sleep holds steady. There is no ending here. Only rest, folding softly back into itself. The night has settled completely. It no longer moves, it simply is. The man remains asleep, his body soft and still, breathing slow, even, a rhythm almost older than thought. The old man leans back in his chair, hands resting on his knees. He does not speak loudly. He barely speaks at all. His voice is a soft echo now, merely brushing the edges of the room. Sleep, he whispers, needs nothing from you. It simply arrives. The man turns slightly, a subtle adjustment, as if finding a position that has existed before him and will exist after. Outside, the town exists only in memory. Doors, paths, walls, all softened by distance. Sounds do not travel this far. Even light bends gently around quiet spaces. The body remembers its own pace. Muscles rest. Joints relax. Mind releases. The old man's voice stretches long pauses between every word, allowing silence to occupy more space than sound. Here, he continues softly, nothing waits. Nothing urges. Nothing interrupts. The man sleeps without effort. He does not dream. Or if he does, the dreams are too gentle to notice. They pass like soft clouds across a wide, empty sky. Time itself seems to have paused. No hour begins. No hour ends. The world continues quietly, but far away. Even when the sun rises, or when shadows move, he remains still, as if folded into the calm of the universe. The children listening are motionless. Their eyes close further. Their bodies sink into the floor. Breath becomes slower. Even the smallest muscle releases tension. The old man murmurs one last time, "You do not need to follow. You only need to rest. The story will continue, whether you notice or not." Every sound softens. Every movement fades. The room becomes nothing more than a quiet space for rest to expand fully. Sleep deepens further. It folds into itself, like a long, dark river, moving without turbulence. The man's chest rises and falls, without thought. Heart steady, mind empty. Outside, the world continues, but it does not disturb him. Nothing can. The old man lets the quiet settle completely. No need to speak. No need to guide. Rest is complete. And in this stillness, the story does not end. It simply drifts. Continuous. Calm. Infinite. Breath slows. Silence grows. Sleep holds all. Nothing announces itself anymore. The space between moments has widened, and sound has learned to rest inside it. The man remains asleep, not drifting, not sinking, simply staying. Breath moves gently, in a rhythm that does not belong to any clock. The old man's voice returns, but only slightly, as if it has been waiting nearby. In rest, he says softly. There is no direction. The room feels distant now. Walls hold their places quietly. The air does not press against the skin. It rests with it. The man shifts once, a small movement. Then stillness returns, complete and unbroken. Outside, whatever world remains, moves carefully, as though aware it should not disturb this space. No footsteps arrive. No voices follow. Even memory has loosened its hold. The old man pauses. Silence expands again, wide and gentle. When nothing asks for attention, he whispers, attention dissolves. The man's body releases what it has been carrying. The neck softens. The hands open. The breath deepens, then steadies. There is no thought of waking. No need to continue. Sleep does not pull, it supports. Time flows quietly around this moment, without touching it. If this part repeats, nothing changes. If it fades, nothing is lost. The old man speaks once more, slowly, leaving space after every word. You are safe. To let go. The words settle, then dissolve into quiet. Breathing remains. Even calm, the man sleeps on, undisturbed by passing hours. The night holds steady. The day waits politely. Far away, here, there is only rest. Continuous, unmeasured, complete. Silence grows soft and stays. The quiet no longer feels empty. It feels settled. The man remains asleep, and even the idea of sleep has softened into something broader. A steady state, unmoving. Breath rises and falls, with no effort behind it. The body remembers how to be held by the surface beneath it. The old man's voice returns, only as much as necessary. It does not guide. It does not explain. In this place, he says softly, nothing needs to continue. The room has faded to a suggestion. Edges blur. Distances lose meaning. Light may change outside, but it does not reach here in any way that matters. The man shifts slightly, then settles again. Emotion so small, it leaves no trace. Time moves, but without direction. It passes through instead of forward. The old man pauses. The pause stretches. It holds. When rest deepens, he whispers. The mind steps aside. The man's jaw loosens. The shoulders release. Hands rest open, as if nothing is expected of them. Breath slows further, then finds a steady rhythm and stays there. Thoughts do not form. They do not need to dissolve. They simply do not arrive. The silence is no longer something to notice. It is the background everything rests on. If this moment repeats, it feels the same. If it stretches, it remains unchanged. The old man speaks again, very gently, leaving long spaces between words. You don't have to listen. You don't have to follow. Nothing is waiting. The words do not linger. They settle, then disappear. The man sleeps on, untouched by clocks, unaware of sequence. Outside, the world may continue, but here, there is no outside. Only breath, only stillness, only rest. The quiet holds steady, wide and soft. Nothing ends. Nothing begins. And because of that, sleep remains. There is no clear beginning to this moment. It feels as though it has already been here for a long time. The man remains asleep, not drifting, not sinking, simply resting in place. His breathing moves slowly, steady and unforced, each breath arriving and leaving, without effort or intention. The old man's voice is very soft now. It does not lead the story forward. It rests inside it. At this depth, he says quietly, the body no longer needs guidance. The room around the man feels distant, as if it belongs to another layer of awareness. Walls exist, but they do not press inward. The air rests gently on the skin, warm and neutral. The man turns slightly in his sleep. A small natural adjustment, then becomes still again. The stillness settles quickly, as if it had been waiting. Time no longer moves forward here. It spreads out, even and wide, without direction. The old man pauses. The silence stretches. It holds its shape. When nothing demands attention, he murmurs. Attention dissolves on its own. The man's shoulders release completely. The muscles in his face soften. His jaw loosens. Hands rest open, with nothing left to hold. Breathing slows further, then finds a rhythm, so gentle. It is almost unnoticeable. Thoughts do not arrive. There is no need to push them away. They simply do not form. The quiet is no longer something to be aware of. It has become the background. Everything rests upon. If this moment repeats, it feels exactly the same. If it stretches longer, nothing changes. The old man speaks again, slowly, leaving space between each phrase. You do not need to follow. You do not need to listen closely. Rest is already happening. The words settle, then fade, leaving only the sound of breath. The man sleeps on, untouched by clocks, unaware of sequence or progress. Outside this space, the world may continue. Light may rise, shadows may move, but none of it enters here. Here, the body remembers how to rest, without effort. Here, the mind stays quiet, without being told. Silence deepens gently, and remains steady. Nothing begins. Nothing ends. And because of that, sleep holds firm, calm and uninterrupted. The stillness remains exactly where it was. Nothing is shifted. Nothing needs to. The man continues to sleep. Not deeply, not lightly, but in a state where the body has stopped measuring depth at all. Breath moves in a slow, even pattern. Each breath arrives gently, rests for a moment, and leaves without resistance. The old man's voice returns, quiet and steady, as if it has been sitting here the entire time. When rest becomes familiar, he says softly, the body stops checking where it is. The room holds its shape loosely now. Edges feel distant. The air is calm and neutral, neither cool nor warm, simply present. The man shifts once in his sleep, a small movement of the shoulders, then settles again. The stillness returns immediately, smooth and uninterrupted. Time stretches evenly. There is no sense of before or after. Moments do not line up. They overlap gently. The old man pauses. Silence expands into the space he leaves behind. At this point, he continues, sleep does not need protection. The man's face relaxes further. The muscles around the eyes soften. The mouth rests naturally open. Nothing is being held anymore. Breathing grows slightly deeper, then steadies again, finding a rhythm that feels complete. Thoughts do not rise. If they try, they dissolve before forming shape. The quiet is no longer noticeable. It is simply where everything rests. If this moment repeats, it repeats without change. If it continues without effort. The old man speaks again, slowly, with long spaces between his words. You don't have to stay awake. You don't have to follow the story. Rest already knows what to do. The words fade gently, leaving only breath behind. The man remains asleep, untouched by light, unaware of sound. Outside this space, the world may move. But here, movement has no meaning. The body remains supported. The mind remains quiet. Silence settles deeper. Not heavy, not empty. Just steady. Nothing begins here. Nothing ends here. And because of that, sleep continues calmly, without interruption. Nothing pulls the man upward. Nothing presses him down. He remains suspended in rest, as if sleep itself has found a stable balance and decided to stay there. Breathing continues slowly, each breath even, each pause unforced. The body no longer checks whether it is awake or asleep. The old man's voice is present again, low and calm, as though it has been moving quietly alongside the silence. When the body feels safe, he says softly, it stops listening for danger. The room has faded further. Walls feel distant. The bed feels wide and supportive. Even the sense of weight has softened into something gentle. The man turns slightly, a small shift of comfort, then becomes still again. The stillness returns smoothly, without interruption. Time stretches outward, not forward. Moments do not pass. They simply rest beside one another. The old man pauses. The pause lasts long enough to feel complete. There is nothing to prepare for now. He continues quietly. No reason to stay alert. The man's shoulders drop further. The neck relaxes. The breath deepens slightly, then finds its place again. Thoughts do not gather. There is no story forming in the mind. No images appear and linger. The quiet feels thick, but not heavy. It feels supportive, like a calm surface holding everything in place. If this part repeats, it repeats exactly as it is. If it continues forward, nothing changes. The old man speaks again, slowly, leaving long spaces between each line. You can let the sound fade. You can let attention drift. Sleep will remain. The words dissolve gently, as if they were never meant to stay. The man remains asleep, unaware of the hour, unaware of change. Outside this place, light may move, shadows may shift, but none of it enters here. Here, the body rests without effort. The mind stays quiet, without instruction. Breathing continues. Even, calm, silence settles deeper. Wide and steady, with nothing to disturb it. Nothing begins. Nothing ends. And in this space, rest continues on its own, smooth and uninterrupted. The stillness remains untouched. Nothing is shifted. Nothing needs to. The man continues to rest, as if sleep has settled into its final shape. Stable, quiet, complete. Breathing flows slowly, each breath smooth and familiar, each pause gentle and unforced. The body no longer listens for change. The old man's voice is calm and low, arriving softly, as though it never truly left. At this stage, he says quietly, the body stops asking questions. The room feels distant now, almost symbolic rather than physical. Walls exist somewhere, but they do not define the space. The air feels even, neither warm nor cool, just present. The man shifts slightly in his sleep, a natural movement of comfort, then becomes still again. The calm returns instantly, smooth and uninterrupted. Time no longer flows in lines. It spreads outward, wide and quiet, without direction. The old man pauses. The silence that follows feels full rather than empty. When the mind lets go, he murmurs, rest deepens on its own. The man's face softens further. The muscles around his eyes release. His hands rest open, with nothing left to hold. Breathing deepens slightly, then settles again, finding a rhythm that feels complete. No thoughts rise. No images linger. Nothing tries to pull awareness back. The quiet now feels familiar. Not something noticed, but something lived inside. If this moment repeats, it repeats without difference. If it stretches longer, it stretches evenly. The old man speaks again, slowly, with long spaces between his words. There is nowhere to go, nothing to remember, nothing to finish. The words fade naturally, leaving only breath behind. The man remains asleep, untouched by sound, unaware of light. Outside this space, the world may continue. Hours may pass, morning may arrive, but none of it enters here. Here, the body rests without effort. The mind stays quiet, without instruction. Silence settles deeper. Not heavy, not empty. Just steady and safe. Nothing begins here. Nothing ends here. And because of that, sleep continues calmly, holding everything, exactly as it should be. Nothing changes now, and that is exactly how it should be. The man remains asleep, resting in a state where the body has stopped, measuring time altogether. Breathing continues in a slow, even rhythm. Each breath arrives gently, rests for a moment, and leaves without effort. The old man's voice is very quiet. So quiet it feels like part of the silence itself. When sleep settles fully, he murmurs, it does not move anymore. The room feels distant, almost unreal. Walls exist somewhere beyond awareness. The bed supports without pressure. The air rests calmly against the skin. The man makes a small movement, a slight turn of the head. Then stillness returns immediately, smooth and complete. Time no longer passes. It rests. Moments do not follow one another. They overlap gently, like soft layers of fabric, placed one on top of another. The old man pauses. The silence that follows feels full, steady, safe. There is nothing to respond to now, he says softly. No need to stay alert. The man's body releases what remains. The chest rises and falls evenly. The jaw stays loose. Hands rest open and relaxed. No thoughts form. No images appear. Nothing tries to pull attention upward. The quiet feels familiar now. Not something noticed, but something lived inside. If this part repeats, it repeats without difference. If it stretches longer, nothing changes. The old man speaks one last time, slowly, leaving long spaces between each phrase. You are already resting. You do not need to listen. You do not need to remember. The words fade before they finish echoing. The man sleeps on, untouched by sound, unaware of light. Outside this place, hours may pass, morning may arrive, but none of it enters here. Here, the body rests on its own. The mind stays quiet, without instruction. Silence remains wide and steady. Nothing begins. Nothing ends. And sleep continues, holding everything gently, exactly as it is. The old man's voice becomes almost weightless now, as if it is no longer sound, but movement. Listen, he says gently, to the space between moments. The man slept longer than usual that night, not because he was tired, but because nothing asked him to wake. When his eyes opened, the room was already warm with light. Morning had arrived, without disturbance, no sharp thoughts, no urgency, just awareness, soft and unshaped. He remained still, not checking the time, not planning the hours. The ceiling above him held its familiar cracks, each one like a quiet map, leading nowhere. He breathed. In, out. The body did the rest. Eventually, he stood. Movement came naturally, like a river continuing. After a bend, in the kitchen, water warmed in a kettle, not rushed, not delayed. Steam rose slowly, twisting into shapes that vanished before becoming anything. The man watched them fade and felt no need to remember them. Outside, the day unfolded gently. People passed. Sounds drifted. Nothing required his opinion. He walked for a while, not toward a place, but within a moment. The road felt familiar, even though it changed. With every step, shadows stretched and relaxed. Light filtered through leaves. Without effort, he sat on a bench and listened. Not for meaning, not for answers, just listening. Time softened. Minutes lost their edges. A bird called once, then silence returned. Unchanged, the man felt something loosen inside him. A quiet release, as if a knot he had forgotten had finally remembered how to open. The old man pauses. The children barely breathe. Life, he says, becomes gentle when we stop holding it. Evening arrived again, unannounced. The sky dimmed slowly, color fading into color. The man returned home, body calm, mind empty. Darkness filled the room, the way water fills a bowl, evenly, without force. He lay down. The bed welcomed him, like an old agreement. Thoughts drifted past, without stopping. Names faded, images blurred. Sleep did not pull him under. It opened, and he stepped in. Breath slowed. Heartbeat softened. The world continued, but far away now. The old man's voice becomes almost a whisper. And there, he says, nothing needs to happen. Silence deepens. Rest settles fully. The story does not end. It simply continues, quietly.